Commander Jinwoo sat in his dimly lit office at the Terran Defense Coalition headquarters, staring at holographic displays that told a story nobody wanted to hear. The blue glow from the screens cast shadows across his tired face as he scrolled. Through invasion records dating back 3 centuries, something was wrong, terribly wrong. The Keltharian invasion had ended just 2 weeks ago. Earth celebrated another miraculous victory, another last-minute salvation from complete destruction. The alien fleet had appeared without warning, their massive ships blotting out the sun over major cities. For months, humanity fought desperately as the Keltharians systematically destroyed military installations, wiped out entire populations, and pushed the survivors to the brink of extinction. Then, just like that, they left. No explanation, no final ultimatum. One day they were burning cities to ash, the next their ships vanished into deep space. The official reports called it a strategic withdrawal. Military analysts claimed Earth's fierce resistance had broken their will to fight. Politicians spoke of human determination, triumphing over impossible odds. Jinwoo knew better. He pulled up the casualty reports, his stomach turning as familiar numbers appeared on screen. 74% of Earth's population dead or missing. Infrastructure destroyed, military forces decimated. Yet somehow humanity survived with just enough people and resources to rebuild. The Keltharians could have finished the job easily, but they chose to leave when victory was within their grasp. The pattern became clearer as Jinwoo dug deeper into classified archives. The Zephyrian invasion of 2387 ended with 73% casualties. The Vorthan assault of 2341 claimed 75%. The Nexarian War of 2298 left 74% dead. Always the same devastating impact. Always the same mysterious retreat just before total annihilation. Each invasion followed an identical playbook. First, overwhelming technological superiority that made human weapons look like toys. Orbital. Bombardments that cracked mountains and boiled oceans. Ground forces that moved through Earth's defenses like they weren't even there. Then months of grinding warfare where humans learned to adapt, to improvise, to fight with desperate creativity. Finally, when less than 30% of humanity remained alive, the invaders simply packed up and left. Jinwoo's hands trembled as he accessed even older files, records that required his highest security clearance. The pattern stretched back. Centuries. The Great Burning of 2156, the Sky Wars of 2034, the Dark Invasion of 1887. Different alien species, different technologies, but the same mathematical precision in destruction and withdrawal. What kind of aliens conquered 90% of a planet, then chose to leave? What military commander would abandon certain victory for no apparent reason? Jinwoo had fought in 3 invasions himself, watched friends die in the ruins of Seoul, seen children starving in underground shelters. The aliens hadn't seemed reluctant to kill. They'd been efficient, ruthless, thorough until they weren't. The commander rubbed his tired eyes and opened another file. Post-invasion recovery data showed another disturbing pattern. After each alien attack, human technology advanced by decades in just a few years. Weapons that should have taken generations to develop appeared in months. Scientists made breakthrough, discoveries that revolutionized warfare, medicine, and space travel, always attributed to human ingenuity under pressure, always perfectly timed to prepare for the next invasion. Jinwoo thought about his own neural interface, the device that let him process tactical data at superhuman speeds. Standard equipment, for all coalition officers, supposedly developed by human researchers after the Nexarian invasion, but the technology was almost too advanced, too perfectly suited for fighting aliens, as if someone had designed it specifically for that purpose. His secure communicator chimed. Dr. Hyojin's face appeared on screen, her expression serious and tired. She worked at the Xenobiology Institute, officially studying alien remains and captured technology. Unofficially, she'd been asking the same questions that kept Jinwoo awake at night. I got your message, she said quietly. You found the pattern too, didn't you? Jinwoo nodded. How long have you known? Years, maybe longer. I've been tracking genetic samples from different invasion sites. The aliens aren't just different species, Jinwoo. They're from completely different evolutionary trees. Some are silicon-based. Others use quantum biology we can barely understand. The odds of them all developing space travel and deciding to attack Earth are mathematically impossible, unless someone's coordinating them or controlling them. Heejin's voice dropped to a whisper. I found something else. Neurological implants in captured alien soldiers. Tiny devices that match components in our own technology. Someone's been manipulating them, making them fight us. Jinwoo felt cold, despite the warm office air. Who would do that, and why? That's what we need to figure out. But Jinwoo, we have to be careful. If someone's been orchestrating these invasions for centuries, they're watching. They know we're asking questions. The commander looked at his screens full of data. Evidence of a conspiracy that spanned hundreds of years and cost billions of lives. Somewhere in the shadows, puppet masters were playing games with humanity's survival. They'd turned Earth into a battlefield using alien species as weapons in some larger plan. But why? What could possibly justify centuries of orchestrated warfare and genocide? Jinwoo closed the files and stood up, his jaw set with determination. Whatever was happening, whoever was responsible, he was going to find the truth. Even if that truth destroyed everything he believed about humanity's greatest victories. Jinwoo met Dr. Heijin at an abandoned subway station beneath Old Seoul, their footsteps echoing in the concrete tunnels. She carried a heavy bag filled with research files and scanning equipment, her face pale from weeks of sleepless investigation. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting strange shadows on the cracked walls. I found something incredible, Heejin whispered, pulling out photographs of ancient stone carvings. Look at these symbols. They're carved into monuments across every continent. Stonehenge, Easter Island, the pyramids in Egypt, temple ruins in Cambodia. All of them have the same geometric patterns. Jinwoo studied the images under her flashlight. Complex spirals and interlocking triangles were etched deep into ancient stone, far older than any known civilization. The symbols looked almost alien, too precise and mathematical for primitive human tools. These carvings match the dates, Hyojin continued, her voice gaining excitement. Every major invasion in recorded history corresponds to these symbols. The Dark Invasion of 1887. There's a symbol for it carved into Mayan ruins. The Sky Wars of 2034. It's etched into a Buddhist temple that's over 2,000 years old. That's impossible, Jinwoo said. But even as he spoke, he knew she was right. How could ancient humans know about future invasions? They didn't. Someone else did. Hyojin pulled out more photographs, these showing modern archaeological sites. I've been tracking excavation teams that found these symbols. Here's where it gets really strange. Every dig site was funded by shell companies that trace back to military contractors, the same contractors who developed our most advanced weapons. Jinwoo felt his blood run cold as the implications sank in. Someone had been planning these invasions for thousands of years, leaving markers throughout human history like a twisted countdown timer. But who had that kind of power? What organization could manipulate events across millennia? Hyojin opened her laptop and showed him classified personnel files she'd somehow accessed. I hacked into the Coalition's research database. Look at the scientists who created our breakthrough technologies. Dr. Kim Min-ho, who invented quantum shield generators after the Nexarian invasion. Dr. Park Soo-jin, who developed plasma weapons following the Vorthan attack. Dr. Lee Dong-wook, who created the neural interface systems. She clicked through their medical records, highlighting strange anomalies. All of them have gaps in their memories during the development periods, weeks or months where they can't remember what they were working on. Their brain scans show unexplained neural activity, and look at this. The screen displayed X-ray images of human skulls. Tiny metallic objects, no bigger than rice grains, were embedded deep in brain tissue. The implants were so small they'd be missed in routine medical exams, hidden in areas that controlled memory and creativity. Someone's been implanting our greatest minds, Heejin said, feeding them technology during their memory blackouts, making them think they invented everything themselves. We're not developing these weapons, we're being given them. Jinwoo thought about his own neural interface, the device that every Coalition officer carried. How many of their technological advances were actually human? How much of their military success was really their own achievement? "There's more," Hyojin continued, pulling up satellite images. "I've been monitoring electromagnetic anomalies around the globe. There are signals being transmitted from hidden stations built into natural formations, mountains, islands, even the ocean floor. The network covers the entire planet." The images showed a web of invisible communications stretching across Earth. Dozens of transmission points, all perfectly positioned to monitor human activity. Jin-Woo realized they were looking at a surveillance system that had been watching humanity for generations. "They're studying us," he said quietly. "Every invasion, every response, every technological breakthrough. We're lab rats in a maze." As if responding to his words, Hee-Jin's laptop screen flickered. Strange symbols appeared briefly before the system crashed completely. Her communication device began buzzing with urgent alerts. Jin-Woo's own equipment showed similar malfunctions. "We triggered something," Hee-Jin whispered, backing away from the dead laptop. "They know we're here." The subway tunnel's lights began shutting down one by one, plunging sections into darkness. In the distance, they could hear mechanical sounds, footsteps that weren't quite human, moving with perfect synchronization through the abandoned passages. Jin-Woo grabbed Hyojin's arm and pulled her toward the emergency exit. "Run! Whatever's down here, we don't want to meet it." They climbed through a maintenance hatch onto the street above, emerging into the bright Seoul sunshine. Around them, normal life continued. People walked to work. Children played in parks. Vendors sold food from street carts. Nobody noticed the two figures stumbling from an underground entrance, clutching evidence of a conspiracy that spanned human history. "Where can we go?" Hee-Jin asked, looking around nervously. "If they have a global surveillance network, nowhere is safe." Jin-Woo thought about the implications. If Watchers had been manipulating humanity for thousands of years, they had resources and technology beyond imagination. They could track anyone, anywhere on Earth, but they'd also made a mistake by revealing themselves too early. "We need allies," he said firmly. "Other people who've noticed the patterns. Scientists, soldiers, anyone who's asked the right questions. If we're going to fight back against whatever's controlling us, we can't do it alone." As they walked through the crowded Seoul streets, Jin-Woo couldn't shake the feeling that invisible eyes were tracking their every movement. The Watchers were still out there, still monitoring humanity's every step. But now, for the first time in centuries, humans were beginning to watch back. The game was changing, and Jin-Woo intended to make sure humanity finally learned the rules. The hidden entrance. To Mount Baekdu lay buried beneath centuries of volcanic rock and carefully planted forest. Jin-Woo and Hyojin had followed electromagnetic signals for 3 days through the Korean wilderness, dodging coalition patrols and automated surveillance drones. The signal led them to what looked like an ordinary hiking trail, but Hyojin's modified scanner revealed something extraordinary hidden underneath. "The readings are off the charts," she whispered, pressing her ear to a seemingly solid rock face. "There's a massive hollow space directly below us, maybe hundreds of meters deep." Jin-Woo found the hidden mechanism purely by accident. His hand brushed against a small depression in the stone, and suddenly the rock face began to shift. Ancient machinery hummed to life, moving tons of stone with perfect silence. A doorway opened, revealing a metal corridor that stretched into darkness. The air inside felt different, cleaner somehow, but with an electric taste that made their skin tingle. Emergency lighting activated as they stepped forward, illuminating. Walls made from materials that didn't exist in any human textbook. The metal seemed to shift and flow like liquid, yet remained solid under their touch. "This isn't human construction," Hee-Jin said, running her fingers along the strange walls. "The engineering is beyond anything we've ever seen. This facility is ancient, but the technology is more advanced than our most modern installations." They walked deeper into the complex, their footsteps echoing in the vast corridors. The facility was enormous, carved from the living rock of the mountain itself. Branching passages led off in all directions, some sloping downward into depths they couldn't see. Jin-Woo's military training told him this was a command center, built to coordinate operations across vast distances. The first chamber they entered took their breath away. Massive screens covered every wall, displaying real-time images from across the galaxy. Star systems, planets, alien civilizations going about their daily lives. Some screens showed species they recognized from past invasions. The Keltharians, the Nexarians, the Vorthans. But they weren't shown as conquerors. They were shown as prisoners. "Look at this," Hyejin called from across the room. She stood before a control panel covered in the same symbols they'd found carved into ancient Earth monuments. "These controls are active. Someone's been using this facility recently." Jinwoo joined her at the panel. The symbols glowed softly under their touch, responding to human contact. As he pressed one sequence, the screens changed to show Earth's history. Not the history taught in schools, but the real story. Images of past invasions played out in perfect detail, showing alien fleets arriving, fighting, then withdrawing according to precise schedules. Each invasion was labeled with clinical precision. Test 47, Zephyrian Assault, Technological Adaptation Rate, exceeded expectations. Test 51, Nexarian Campaign, Social Cohesion, under extreme pressure, satisfactory. Test 55, Keltharian Invasion, Military Innovation Speed, outstanding. "We're test subjects," Jinwoo said, his voice hollow. "Every invasion, every war, every breakthrough, it's all been planned." They moved deeper into the facility, following signs written in multiple alien languages. The next chamber was even larger, filled with thousands of cylindrical pods arranged in perfect rows. Each pod was filled with a glowing blue liquid, and floating inside was a living being from another world. Hyejin approached the nearest pod, her scanner detecting faint life signs from within. The creature inside looked nothing like any species from Earth's invasions. It had multiple arms, crystalline skin that reflected the pod's light, and eyes that seemed aware despite its suspended state. "They're alive but unconscious," she reported. "The life support systems are keeping them in some kind of stasis. But why? What are they doing here?" Jinwoo found a control terminal and activated it using the same symbols from the previous room. Information flooded the screens around them, written in languages that somehow made sense as they read them. The translation technology was working directly through their neural interfaces, feeding them understanding. The pods contained representatives from over 1,000 different species. Each one had been captured during their own test invasions on their homeworlds. Species that had failed the trials. Some had been too peaceful, unable to develop weapons fast enough under pressure. Others had been too aggressive, destroying themselves before reaching the required technological milestones. Still others had simply given up when faced with overwhelming odds. "They're collecting failures," Hyejin realized. "Every species that doesn't meet their standards gets stored here like specimens in a museum." The final chamber held the answer to their greatest question. At the center of the room stood three figures that clearly weren't human, but looked close, enough to be disturbing. They were tall and graceful, with pale skin that seemed to glow from within. Their eyes were larger than human eyes, filled with an intelligence that spoke of eons of experience. These were the architects. One of them turned as Jinwoo and Hyejin entered, showing no surprise at their arrival. When it spoke, the words came not from its mouth but directly into their minds through their neural interfaces. "Greetings, humans. We have been expecting you. Your species shows remarkable progress in pattern recognition and investigative persistence. These traits will serve you well in the trials ahead." Jinwoo stepped forward, his military training overriding his fear. "What trials? What do you want from us?" The architect's expression remained calm, almost paternal. "We are preparing your species for survival. Earth serves as an accelerated evolutionary environment designed to push your people toward the capabilities necessary for what is coming. Other species required millennia to develop the traits you have achieved in mere centuries. You've been murdering billions of people," Hyejin said, her voice shaking with rage. "How is that preparation? How is genocide supposed to help us?" "Death is unfortunate but necessary for rapid advancement," the architect replied without emotion. "Species that cannot adapt under extreme pressure cannot survive what approaches. We have tested over 10,000 civilizations. Most failed within the first few trials. Humanity has exceeded all expectations." Jinwoo looked around at the thousands of stasis pods, each one representing an entire species that had been judged and found wanting. The scope of it was overwhelming. These architects had been playing God with entire civilizations for millions of years. "What's coming?" he asked. "What are you preparing us for?" The architect's eyes seemed to look through him into some distant horror. The Devourers approach this galaxy. Reality itself bends before their hunger. Every civilization they encounter ceases to exist, not just destroyed but erased from the fabric of existence itself. We search for a species capable of fighting them, of standing against the impossible. And if we refuse to be your weapons, then you join the others in eternal sleep, and we continue our search with the next promising species. The architect gestured toward the stasis pods. "But we believe humanity will choose differently. Your species has never accepted defeat, even when faced with certain destruction. This quality may be what saves not just Earth, but all existence." Jinwoo felt the weight of impossible choice settling on his shoulders. Fight for the beings who had orchestrated humanity's greatest tragedies, or watch his species join the countless others floating in silent pods. Either way, humanity's destiny was no longer their own to decide. The architect gestured toward the chamber's massive central display, and the screens around them flickered to life with images that defied understanding. Jinwoo and Hyejin watched in horrified fascination as entire star systems simply vanished from existence, not destroyed but erased as if they had never been there at all. "This is the Andromeda Galaxy, 3 million years ago," the architect explained, its mental voice carrying undertones of ancient grief. "Home to over 400 billion stars and countless civilizations. Watch what happens when the Devourers arrive." The display showed a thriving galaxy filled with the lights of countless worlds. Trade routes connected distant systems, and the gentle glow of artificial constructs spoke of civilizations that had mastered their environment. Then something changed at the galaxy's edge. Not an invasion or attack, but a spreading darkness that consumed everything it touched. "They don't come from our universe," the architect continued. "The Devourers exist in the spaces between realities, feeding on the fundamental forces that hold existence together. When they breach into our dimension, they don't just destroy matter and energy. They unravel the basic laws of physics themselves." Hyejin watched entire solar systems wink out of existence in seconds. "How is that possible? Even antimatter weapons can't do that. Because the Devourers don't use weapons as you understand them. They are entropy itself given form and purpose. Where they pass, cause and effect break down. Time becomes meaningless. The very concept of existence loses coherence." The display shifted to show other galaxies, each one suffering the same fate. Civilizations that had lasted millions of years, species that had transcended physical form, artificial intelligences spanning entire star clusters, all of them consumed by the spreading void that followed the Devourer's passage. Jinwoo felt his military mind trying to process the tactical implications. How do you fight something like that? What weapons could possibly work against entities that can destroy reality? "That is precisely the question we have been trying to answer for 60 million years, the architect replied. "We have tested every possible approach. Pure technology fails because the Devourers simply unmake whatever you build. Psychic powers collapse when reality itself becomes unreliable. Even transcending physical existence offers no protection. The Devourers consume souls as easily as they consume matter." Another screen activated, showing the architect's own history. Jinwoo saw their great cities, their impossible technologies, their mastery over space and time. A civilization so advanced they could reshape galaxies and create pocket dimensions. Yet even they had fled before the Devourer's approach. "We were the greatest technological civilization in our galaxy's history," the architect said without pride. "We could manipulate the fundamental forces of creation itself. When the Devourers came, we lasted exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes. Our greatest weapons, powered by the energy of collapsed stars, had no effect whatsoever." "Then how are you still alive?" Hyejin asked. "We ran. We abandoned our galaxy, our people, everything we had built, and fled to the edge of the universe. For millions of years, we have watched the Devourers consume galaxy after galaxy, always moving closer to this region of space. The Milky Way, is one of the last major galaxies in their path. The implications hit Jinwu like a physical blow. You're using us as test subjects to find a weapon against them. All those invasions, all those deaths, you're trying to breed the perfect soldiers. Not soldiers, something far more specific. The architect manipulated the display to show detailed analyses of various species. We have tested over 10,000 civilizations, looking for the traits necessary to fight entities that exist outside normal reality. Most species, when faced with the impossible, accept defeat. They try to understand, to negotiate, to find rational solutions. The screen showed battle footage from other worlds. Advanced aliens with incredible technology facing simulated devourer attacks. In every case, the same pattern emerged. Initial shock, followed by desperate attempts to analyze and counter the threat using logic and science. When their rationale approaches failed, the species either surrendered or destroyed themselves rather than face annihilation. Humans are different, the architect continued. Your species has a unique combination of traits that we have never encountered elsewhere. You adapt faster than any other species we have tested. Under extreme pressure, you innovate in ways that defy logic. Most importantly, you refuse to accept the impossible. Hijin pulled up data on her scanner, cross-referencing the invasion records with what they were seeing. You've been selecting for aggression and stubbornness. The invasions weren't just tests of our technology. You were measuring our psychological responses. Correct. Other species we tested developed superior technology, but lacked the necessary mindset. The Keltharians created weapons that could crack planets, but when faced with an enemy they couldn't understand, they retreated to analyze the situation. The Vorthans achieved perfect unity of mind across their entire species, but this made them predictable. The Nexarians transcended physical existence entirely, yet they still followed logical patterns. The architect showed them combat simulations, alien species fighting against devourer analogues. Each one followed predictable strategies, trying to outthink or overpower their enemies. When those approaches failed, they became paralyzed by the impossibility of their situation. Humans do not follow logical patterns when faced with extinction. Your species becomes more dangerous as the situation becomes more hopeless. Where other species see impossible odds and surrender, humans see impossible odds and attack anyway. This irrationality is your greatest strength. Jinwu thought about humanity's military history. Every desperate last stand, every impossible victory, every time humans had won against overwhelming odds by refusing to give up. You think our craziness will work against entities that consume reality. The Devourers operate according to absolute logic. They can predict and counter any rational response because they understand the fundamental laws that govern existence. But they cannot predict or counter responses that make no logical sense. When humans fight, you don't just try to win, you try to win in ways that should be impossible. The display showed Earth's invasion history from a new perspective. Each alien attack had been designed to push humanity towards specific psychological breaking points. The architects hadn't just been testing weapons and tactics, they had been measuring how humans responded when everything they knew about warfare became useless. The neural interfaces, the technology you've given us, it's all designed to enhance our irrational responses, Hijin realized. You're not making us smarter. You're making us more unpredictably human. Precisely. Logic and intelligence are weaknesses against the Devourers, but chaos, creativity, and the absolute refusal to accept defeat, these may be the only forces in the universe that can stand against them. The architect's expression grew more serious, if such a thing were possible. The Devourers have consumed 80% of this galaxy's outer rim. At their current rate of approach, they will reach the core systems, including Earth, within 50 of your years. This is humanity's final test. Around them, the facility's systems began activating. Weapons that existed only in theoretical physics materialized from walls that bent space and time. The air itself began to shimmer with energies that human science had no names for. We offer you a choice, the architect said. Accept the tools and knowledge we have prepared. Join us in the final battle against extinction itself and save not just your species but all existence. Or refuse, and watch as reality comes apart around you. Jinwoo looked at the thousands of stasis pods containing species that had failed this same test. Then he looked at the screens showing the approaching darkness that would consume everything they had ever known. What guarantee do we have that fighting will make any difference? None whatsoever, the architect replied with stark honesty. Logic says the devourers cannot be defeated. Mathematics proves that reality itself cannot stand against entropy given consciousness. Every calculation shows that existence will end when they complete their feeding. Then why fight at all? Because humans have never let mathematics stop them from attempting the impossible, and in a universe where logic has already failed, perhaps impossibility is the only hope that remains. The choice lay before them: become the architect's weapons in a war against the unwinnable, or watch everything they loved disappear into the void between realities. The emergency session of the Global Defense Council lasted 18 hours. Jinwoo stood before representatives from every nation on Earth, his uniform still dusty from the Mount Baekdu facility, presenting evidence that rewrote human history. Hyojin's scientific data filled massive screens around the chamber, showing invasion patterns, alien technology analyses, and most terrifying of all, images of galaxies being consumed by the approaching devourers. "You're asking us to trust beings who've orchestrated the deaths of billions," President Chen said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "How do we know this isn't just another manipulation?" Jinwoo had expected this resistance, because they gave us a choice. For the first time in centuries, they're not controlling us through staged invasions or implanted scientists. They've laid out the truth and asked us to decide. "Some truth," muttered General Park. "They turn our planet into a testing ground, murder 3/4 of our population multiple times, then ask us to save the universe for them." "Not for them," Yejin interjected, stepping forward with her tablet full of calculations. "For everyone. The devourers don't discriminate. They'll consume the architects just as easily as they'll consume us. This isn't about saving our manipulators. It's about saving existence itself." The debate raged for hours. Some leaders wanted to reject the architects entirely, preferring to face extinction on their own terms rather than serve as weapons for their tormentors. Others argued for complete cooperation, believing humanity had no choice but to follow the architect's plan. Jinwoo had a different idea. "We don't serve them, and we don't reject them," he said, when the room finally quieted. "We become equal partners. They have technology and knowledge. We have something they've spent millions of years trying to create artificially, the ability to fight impossible battles and win." "What exactly are you proposing?" asked Dr. Kim, the head of Earth Science Council. "We demand full access to all their technology and knowledge. We free every species in those stasis pods and give them the same choice we're making. Most importantly, we fight this war our way, using human tactics and human leadership. They've spent centuries proving that human unpredictability is our greatest weapon. Now let's use it." The vote was closer than Jinwoo had hoped, but it passed. Earth would join the fight against the devourers, but as equals rather than servants. The architect, somewhat to everyone's surprise, agreed to the terms without argument. 3 weeks later, reality began to tear apart. The first dimensional breach opened above the Pacific Ocean. Jinwoo watched from the command center of humanity's new flagship, a vessel that combined architect technology with human engineering in ways that should have been impossible. Where the architects built for efficiency and logic, humans had added redundant systems, backup plans, and weapons that served no purpose except to make the crew feel better about fighting cosmic horrors. "Breach expanding," reported Lieutenant Su Young from her sensor station. "It's exactly as the architects predicted. Space-time is becoming unstable in a sphere roughly 50 kilometers across." Through the view screen, Jinwoo could see the tear. In reality itself, it looked like someone had cut a hole in the fabric of existence, revealing the hungry void beyond. The water beneath it wasn't boiling or exploding. It was simply ceasing to exist as the fundamental laws of physics unraveled. "Devourers emerging," Hyojin announced from her position at the science station. She had insisted on being present for the battle, claiming that her xenobiology expertise was essential for understanding their enemies. The entities that poured through the dimensional breach defied description. They weren't creatures in any sense humans could understand. but rather holes in reality shaped like predators. Looking at them directly made Jinwoo's eyes water as his brain tried to process beings that existed in more dimensions than human perception could handle. All units engage with Protocol Chaos, Jinwoo ordered, using the battle plan they developed specifically for this moment. Protocol Chaos was the antithesis of everything the architects had taught them about warfare. Instead of coordinated attacks and logical tactics, it called for random, unpredictable actions that served no strategic purpose except to confuse enemies, who expected rational behavior. Human ships attacked from impossible angles, using weapons that shouldn't work together, following flight patterns that violated basic physics. The liberated alien species, freed from their stasis pods and given the same enhanced technology, fought alongside them with a ferocity born of eons of imprisoned rage. "The Devourers are slowing," reported Captain Min-Soo from the destroyer Souls. "Revenge. Their advance pattern is becoming erratic. It's like they're having trouble processing our attack vectors." Jinwoo smiled grimly. The Devourers operated on pure logic, predicting enemy actions based on optimal tactical responses. But humans weren't optimal. They were gloriously, chaotically irrational. "Dr. He-Jin, initiate the impossibility drive," he ordered. He-Jin's fingers flew over controls that combined architect quantum mechanics with human stubbornness. The ship's experimental drive system activated, doing something that every law of physics said was completely impossible. It moved the vessel backward through time by exactly 3 seconds, while simultaneously existing in 17 different dimensions. The effect on the Devourers was immediate and catastrophic. Beings that consumed reality by following absolute logical principles suddenly faced a ship that existed in a state of logical impossibility. Their feeding patterns collapsed as they tried to process prey that shouldn't exist. "All ships follow. Souls lead," Jinwoo broadcast. "Execute every impossible maneuver in the manual. Make them try to understand us." The battle that followed stretched across multiple dimensions and violated several fundamental constants of the universe. Human creativity, enhanced by architect technology but guided by purely human logic-defying tactics, created paradoxes that the Devourers couldn't resolve. Ships fired weapons backward in time to hit enemies that hadn't arrived yet. Fighters flew in formation patterns that formed mathematical impossibilities, creating logic loops that trapped Devourers in recursive calculation errors. The liberated alien species, learning human tactics in real time, began implementing their own versions of impossible strategies. "Jinwoo," He-Jin called over the chaos of battle. "I'm reading massive quantum fluctuations from the dimensional breach. The Devourers are retreating." Through the view screen, Jinwoo watched as the entities that had consumed galaxies fled back through their dimensional tear. They weren't defeated in any traditional sense. They simply couldn't process a universe where their prey refused to follow logical rules. As the breach sealed itself and reality stabilized around them, Jinwoo understood the true scope of what the architects had accomplished. Earth hadn't been a trap to contain humanity's potential. It had been a forge, using controlled adversity to create the only force in the universe capable of fighting the impossible. "Sir," Lieutenant Su Young reported, "we're receiving surrender. Broadcasts from Devourer forces across 7 galaxies. It appears our victory here has caused a cascading effect. They're retreating from every front, simultaneously." Jinwoo looked around the bridge at his crew. Humans and aliens working together, using technology that shouldn't exist to win battles that couldn't be won. The architects had spent millions of years searching for a species capable of defeating the Devourers through sheer stubborn refusal to accept defeat. They had finally found them. "Set course for the architect homeworld," Jinwoo ordered. "I think it's time we had a proper conversation about the future of this galaxy, as equals." The ship turned toward the stars, carrying with it the proof that sometimes the greatest victories come not from following the rules, but from being human enough to break them.